Hello, this is Swag, and today we are going to review the PCC contest entries. I've already looked at them quite a bit, so I'm going to be running through these reviews pretty quick just to give people some feedback on their builds. This contest has just finished, and the winner of the contest is announced, and I'll be doing a review of that park by itself. So yeah, I mean, let's get through it. So the first one, and we're just going to do ABC order. First one we have is from Abud, Immortal Cactus, The Brew, and Low Poly Surf. And they rebuilt Knott's Berry Farm and Soak City. So I was able to see this park as it was getting built throughout the build because Low Poly was sharing pictures and live streaming. And I will say my favorite part of this park is probably the Ghost Town area. Lots of good buildings, and the path looks pretty unique because it's a different piece. It's just a fun little area. I like how some of the rides interact with the area as well. I would say one thing about this park that I feel needs to be said, well, that looks like water, but it's just an awning, is the rides themselves, for the most part, don't really feel like they're in defined areas. So now I'm not trying to tell you to put a ride in a box and then wrap it with pavement or something like that. What I mean by that is we've got sometimes fences that we really can't see because there's so much more going on in the area that when I look at it from different directions or I'm just running around, it's hard to see necessarily where the peeps are going, where the ride's going, where the line for the ride is. It just doesn't come across very easily. Now, that could be because it's Knott's Berry Farm and a lot of these rides are on top of each other. But when I zoom in on this screenshot, I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's rides everywhere. Where's the station for this ride? Where's the station for that ride? And I don't know if because it's Knott's Berry Farm and it's really packed into place that they didn't really have much of an opportunity to help that situation. But I feel like maybe if he gave himself a little bit more space because it's RCT and not real life, that you might have been able to separate these rides just a little bit more, or at least given the entrances a little more space or the exits a little more space. Very nitpicky though. I must say I really do enjoy most of the rides on this park and the way it looks. You will also notice he built a ton, I say they built a ton of areas outside of the park. One of my favorite parts of the entire build is this TJ Maxx because it has really nice awnings and the windows look nice. I know some people said this makes the area look dead, and to be honest, the park is the whole point of this. Everything on the exterior is just more detail, so I really could not mark you down for that because guess what? You built all of this as extra. This is just fun. Another really big highlight is this hotel. It looks very nice. I think the building's very well done. It captures what was the reality of the build in California. So overall, great job. I believe this park, I do not remember exactly the ratings I gave it. I think it was either an 8 or an 8.5. So good job overall. Maybe took on too much and could have focused more on the park. That's just my feedback. Next up, we've got Ball Pit Warrior, who rebuilt Fun Spot Atlanta. And you've got Air Force One, which is a fantastic RMC coaster. We've got some golf course, we got some flat rides, and we got a bunch of go-kart rides. This park was the best park when it came to peep management, like peep sceneries, peep scenes. The golf course was fantastic. Lots of custom pieces or scenery objects to make this golf course look fantastic. I mean, I really like the peep scenes in this park. That was probably my favorite part overall. The ride itself, I think it it did a pretty good job overall. I think my biggest feedback is some of the supports come across as a little bulky in areas. Down here, I believe it may look like this in real life, so that might just be my preference of how an RMC looks versus how he built it. But I think that's going to be probably my biggest feedback on this coaster is just the smaller down to the ground supports look a little funky. And in RCT, I think building up a ride a little taller than you might need to in real life might be the way to go. I do think everything else on the ride looks fantastic. The station's super creative. The queue line, super simple. The sign over here is awesome. Another emphasis on like the small scenes, using the vehicles and signs. Ball Pit made some fantastic, like this is a little barbecue car or food truck, and this is another food truck. We've got a guest or worker joyriding in the back of the park. There's a fun little scene about the brew winning again. Congrats to the brew. And like Peeps frozen at the tables. I think having frozen Peeps at the tables is actually really cool because it gives the area like a more lived-in effect without Peeps running in and around and leaving. There's another cutoff with like the arcades and somebody's playing a super cool arcade ride. I love these little tracks, the skid marks. It's fantastic. The buildings, the facades, they all did their job. I really like this bigger flat roof. Using the track and like just moving the blocks around was a really good way of giving a flat roof more detail. For those of you who can't really tell, this is a ride monorail painted like the ground color or tarmac color to make these awesome curved rides. I think it's a really innovative way to make a smaller go-kart track. Sometimes the double wide feels too big, if I'm being honest. Loved this Ferris wheel. All the rest of the rides are very, very solid. It's a small park, so it didn't seem like too much to handle, but he did build this in 3 weeks, so that's pretty darn impressive. Overall, I think the pathing looks very solid as well. And like I said, the peep scenes were great. I believe I gave this one a 9. And, I mean, the only feedback I could really give is, I mean, like maybe cleanliness here and there. And, like I said, the supports for the RMC. But other than that, I think this is a fantastic park. You can't really go wrong with a 9. Next up, we have Beggs. And Beggs had a really story-driven park and then a lot of cutaway usage. I believe this park was like people were going against it because they were mistreating animals or something like that. I like how you point out to use the cutaway. If anybody calls this tacky, I just don't see it. You know this is a building and you know that sign's not going to be there. It's just to tell us to use cutaway. So you go ahead, you look down here, you've got tons of interior space. You've got rides, you've got playgrounds, you've got bouncy houses, stuff like that. We've got an ice skating rink. So really fun interior buildings. I know they're pretty big, and I think a lot of this roof does kind of look like track, and it's tough to do a roof this big without using track. I'm not sure what you would have used. If I spent a little more time talking about it or looking at it, maybe I would have been able to figure out a better way. I think my favorite part is this dolphin show. So we're talking like SeaWorld. Look at that. Dolphins jumping up into the air. Super fun. Super unique. Throwing people in the stands. I thought this was fantastic overall. Let's get rid of cutaway view. Over here we've got like a bird exhibit where there's like birds flying around and and people watching it just like you would in a normal park. You're showing up, you're watching the bird, eagle fly over to a dude. Nice little water park, carousel, nice Ferris wheel, other rides throughout the park. Because this park isn't very ride centric, it feels more like a fairground, which that's how it feels. That's what it is. So good job on that. but when I look at everything, it all feels very like this is that, this is that, this is that. There's not a whole lot of interaction between bits and pieces of the park. Everything's kind of segmented, and maybe that's the realism of the park, but it feels a little less interesting when you're looking at the park overall. So maybe it's just like hey, this was easier to do, and it didn't take too many advanced concepts, but overall pretty well done. Love these small rides, love the penguins, the exhibits. Very creative use of different objects and different rides to do different things for the park. This is hilarious that there's a coaster that looks like this. I think he showed screenshots of this in real life too. So overall, great job. I think the uniqueness of some of these entertainment areas is really what pulled this park together. So overall, good job. Okay, now we got BE Player who remade, I think this is called Hansa Park. And I remember looking at this and opening this up, and the scale of a couple buildings feel a little big compared to what they are in real life. So maybe the scale might be something that maybe needed to be reworked. I've seen other people attempt to do some of these rides, and they're not so intense and crazy. So I believe maybe if you scaled down just a little bit for some of these rides, it would have fit a little better. There's a lot of foliage in the center of the park, and that actually allows me to kind of focus in on the rides themselves, so I kind of enjoy that. So good job on that. Here's another one of the rides. Using the DKSO repaintable bricks, I think you did a good job building these buildings. I believe this entranceway is like a lot more grand in real life. So it's funny how you built some of these buildings enormous in the back, but up here I feel like these could have been improved by increasing the size overall. The rides altogether honestly are pretty solid. I don't think anything is screaming out to me that it's impressive, like, oh wow, that's extremely well done. But they're all fine, like they meet par overall. There was a area of the map over here. I had to look up what this was in real life. I believe it's like tarp or like awning. It's more of a foliage, not a foliage. It's more of a large piece of roof, and I actually think having this and then maybe putting track over the wooden coaster would have been more realistic to what the ride actually has. So that's some feedback I'll have over on that end. And then yeah, I mean, solid job. The pathing's a little blocky. You've got all of these large shapes, and theoretically, if you were looking at doing some diagonal pathing or diagonal fences, I think it would really allow you to smoothen out a lot of the kind of angular parts of this map that kind of come across as just scattered. This feels a little more scattered than smooth, and that might be the next step. Maybe you take a chance on doing some diagonal pathing, diagonal fencing to really pull things together. So overall, good job, great park. And you're going to hear me saying this a lot. Overall, good job. Finishing a full park is intense. So any of you who are looking at this and going like, oh, I could do better than that, like, go ahead and try. It's tough to do a full park. I was pulling my hair out by the end of my park, and I had a lot of teammates helping me out. So yeah, I mean, good job to anybody who finished their parks. Oops. Next up, we have Brutal Seed. This is a section of Cedar Point. So we've got Millennium Force, Rougarou, and some smaller rides. I really liked and enjoyed this remake of, what is this, Millennium Force? Well, I just said that. It's actually pretty solid. I do believe this is a really good job. I think this is their first entry. So, like, fantastic. You're doing diagonal fencing. You're doing some track planters. I was a little let down that, I mean, obviously, Cedar Point's a huge park. So, and this is a park recreation. So, I think you just did a section of the park, which felt to me a little off base of what we were hoping to see in these entries. And then the Rougarou remake feels a little stretched. Where in the rules of the contest, Dirkling kind of pointed out, hey, make your best effort at the ride recreations. You do not have to make them piece by piece reflect the actual ride, because he knows that just scale an RCT is impossible to do. So um, take that and kind of look at rides next time as to like, hey, what's this element that needs to be here, and how can I make that element look a little bit better? So I think very solid job for your first park. And hey, maybe if you had more time or you want to do an RCC, I think you've got a pretty good skill set to get that done. So fantastic. Good job. And hope to see more from you in the future. This is Busch Gardens Williamsburg by Fidwell. I think this was one of the parks that had the most going on when it came to the amount of rides. Oh my gosh, my game's lagging. That's how big his park is. The amount of rides, the amount of buildings and sections. Ooh, I just noticed. That looks really great. Like sort of a tapered awning area. So good job. There's going to be things I can notice and not notice about certain parks. I think my favorite ride overall was this Tempesto. Oh my gosh, whoever designed this ride, such a good design. Cannot believe you did such a good job. Might be joking. I think all of the rides are very solid. So when I was telling you, and I was going over, I think BE Players Park, Hansa Park, where the rides are good, but none of them really stood out. This is where I think Fidwell kind of took the next step. There's quite a few rides in here, and a lot of them had a lot of extra effort. We got some cutaway views for this awesome drop track for Bolton Ride. I really love the lift hill for, what is this, Alpengeist. I think the interaction in the areas of Griffin, and then, of course, when you open the park and you're looking at Loch Ness, it's just super cool how the pathing and everything really interacts with the rest of the park. So that's maybe my feedback from BE Player is something that Fidwell's already taken and is already doing a fantastic job at. So awesome job overall, Fidwell. And if you don't know, Fidwell's got a YouTube channel where you can go watch him build this step by step. So make sure to go check that out because it's a fantastic YouTube series, and Fidwell's the man. We'll skip over this part. Okay, next up is Horror Girl, who remade California Great America, but an actual, more historical California Great America. So it's not the current park. Might have some rides, but overall, this is an older version. So the first thing you might notice is this Peep Jam, and we actually noticed this when we were going over the original park. Dealing with Peep Jams is tough. That's when I would, go ahead and reach out to other builders who might be able to help you figure out. I know this is a solo entry, but never be afraid to go after and get some feedback. It's just like writing a paper for school. You're going to have a rough draft, and if you get it reviewed and you get some notes, that actually might make your final build even better. So biggest feedback. You've got a lot of buildings, and they do feel pretty boxy. The shaping of buildings is something that even I have tough time with because the amount of pieces you have are a little bit tougher to use. So when you build a building or duplicate a building in real life into RCT, you want to get the general shape of the building by, blocking out on the ground, and then figure out how you can make the roof by potentially overlapping roof pieces or doing a flat piece. This is actually one of the better buildings. I don't know, I'm zoomed in over here, but just overall you can see rectangle, 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 square, rectangle, 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 rectangle. There's buildings that are L-shaped, there's buildings that are T-shaped. That is really going to make your buildings feel more organic overall. Some other things, this ride right here, I know exactly what you're going for because I tried to build one on Astroworld, but it is enormous. This is giant, and it's a crazy thing to build. And when you zoom out, it's almost the biggest thing in the entire park. I think maybe this drop tower and this are the two biggest eye draws. Um, I think that might be a negative on this circumstance. And my feedback would have been to shrink it down and maybe not make it peepable, but have the movement. Um, it's hard to say. I just think that it feels kind of awkward. It looks like there's actually 2 or 3 different rides right here, which is actually really impressive. But um, the problem with this is just how standoutish it is. A lot of the things are very standoutish. This, I don't know why the ground is purple over here. Or sorry, blue. I'm not colorblind, but it just feels a little odd. Overall, I don't like the dark blue color. I'm sort of confused why the blue of the water is different than the blue of the water in the ride. Maybe it's not. Maybe my eyes are just that bad. I don't know. I'm kind of messed up right here. I think my favorite part of this park was the rapids. I actually think these rapids are pretty well done. There's, a few quirky things, like it looks like these splashes are a little spammed in there, but I really like how it blends into the landscape. And then when it comes to flat rides, there's a lot of them, and I see that you're doing some fencing to make it look more organic. And honestly, I just noticed some of these planters are actually very well done. But overall, I think what I'm seeing the most is just kind of blockiness. So perhaps taking a look at other people's parks that you admire, where you see their path work as promising or something that you would like to duplicate, and just working with them and asking them how you could make it better. I honestly think this park, with feedback before it was opened, would probably have been an improvement overall. So congrats on finishing a park like this. This is a big size park, probably at the same scale as Fidwell's parks with a little less intense rides, but congratulations nevertheless on building the park. Now we're looking at an error, and this is one of the better parks in the contest. And first thing I want to point out is my favorite areas. I really like these dune dirt bikers. I love the track marks. It's something I saw in Ball Pit's entry as well. But it just adds some life to an area that could be pretty lifeless overall. And then over here, man, I love this like dirty like materials area where it looks like they've got a bunch of building materials where they might be working on a project. And I just think it comes across as a great detail that really brings the park to life. Love this area over here with maybe some more overgrown areas. Another thing that people have pointed out, man, these buses are bussin', dude. These are awesome. I really think it adds a lot of character to the park. In the park, I think a lot of these flat rides and a lot of these coasters really work. There's a lot of character. You're using a lot of creative pieces to get what you're going for, and I think you pull it off pretty well. As for feedback, I think the buildings that are throughout the park feel fairground, festival, crazy, and maybe that's what the aesthetic of the park is, but I feel like you're missing like simplistic builds. Like, I don't know, is there a restroom in the back corner that looks kind of like a normal building or something? Whereas the outside of your park has tons of those buildings, and I think they look pretty darn good. I won't call them extremely like fantastic or anything like that, but they get the point across that this is a waterfront boardwalk, whatever you're talking about. I know a lot of people love this brick theater. It's actually a really nice theater. I can't buy into these pipes on top. That looks so odd because of the way the color is, but I love this piece of the building right here. This brick building piece right here is super awesome architecturally. I just noticed you're using some of those expansion pieces right here to add that little bump out. It looks really nice overall. I believe I gave this a pretty solid score, maybe an 8, maybe an 8.5 overall. The rides themselves are solid, but I think the park another park that lends itself to sort of just like a fairground park with a couple of coasters. Really felt like it wasn't too intense to remake, which of course gave you the absolute um, awesome opportunity to build such a good area. I also forgot to mention this building over here. Fantastic. It's a British building. It looks ugly, but it's awesome. When I say it looks ugly, architecturally, it's just so bland, but um, like it is so good. So good overall. And man, look at this texturing. Moving from like mossy growing to like less moss. It's such a good crunchy sort of idea. I just noticed some of these ruins over here. Maybe those are old buildings that have deteriorated over time. So much character, honestly. And then the park itself, lots of life. So awesome job, Error. Slowly becoming somebody who I think is going to be a pretty good builder in the near future. So good job. Lurker and Ricardo Wardo rebuilt. What is this park called? Attracti Park Slagharen. Probably said that wrong. So, this was the first park I opened, and I think it did a solid job when it comes to these rides. The problem with this park is the lack of detail and the kind of robustness of the buildings. I don't know what these buildings are, and maybe circus and show theaters. Okay, so maybe it's like a fairground where there's a lot of stalls inside these buildings. Um, and maybe that's unfinished. I don't know. It feels like this was really rushed. And I can't really congratulate you for just rushing a project for the sake of finishing the project. So I'm kind of disappointed in that. The Oh wow, I just noticed those stacking. Um, I would like to give more of a positive review on this. I think a lot of the park is fine. You've got some rides, you've got some shoestrings, you probably duplicated the park pretty well because it's a simple, smaller park. But finishing something for the sake of speed building and getting an entry in, I don't know if that comes across as the right way to build it overall. And I say that, and there's details here and there that honestly work out pretty well. But man, I just can't. I keep looking at this and I'm going like, man, this is just very quickly built. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know if there was a story to this one. I don't remember. And I'm sorry for maybe knocking down on it a little too hard. But maybe that's because I think Lurker and Ricardo Wardo have made a lot better parks overall in the past. So maybe I'm just used to you guys doing higher performance. But overall, I feel like I'm really missing out on a lot of details and a lot of thought behind the project when it comes to taking something beyond just plopping down rides and throwing some scenery around it. Here we have Holiday World by Papaneth. I'm just going to go to my favorite part of the park. Oops. Favorite part of the park, which is this entrance. I've seen in quite a few YouTube videos this entrance, and man, this really comes across very well. So congrats on that. I think one of the biggest feedback things that we've seen from most reviewers is this use of RMC track and wood track mixed in. And I know you were trying to do the layouts as accurately as possible, but when it comes down to is aesthetics and potentially maybe going more along the lines with some wooden coaster track and just changing the layout a little bit to provide a more aesthetically pleasing ride. One of the feedbacks I have, and even for rides like in real life that might be going through the trees and nobody can see it from any angles but one or two, you do want to give it more breathing space. I mean, it looks like this tree's overlapping on top of the ride itself. Think about breathing space, and then I think what I'm about to notice is you did not use the land texture anywhere throughout the park. And maybe if you did, you maybe did some light tan underneath some path here or there. It looks like you did use, oh my gosh, party over here. It looks like you used it some places. But when you have mountains like this, don't be against adding a large swath of, grassy dirt and, little bits of dirt here and there to really differentiate. I know you're covered in trees. And maybe that's just saying you put a little too many trees on this park. But there's areas like this where I'm looking at grass going straight to water, grass under the ride, that potentially adding that or adding dirt under the ride would make it feel a little bit more, oh yeah, they built a coaster over this. Why would there be like grass just plainly under the ride? Maybe mowed grass at some points would look a little awkward. Here we have another wooden coaster that's used the RMC track. In this circumstance, this one looks almost fully RMC. So in my mind, I would be like, oh, it looks like in this coaster, or this part of the park, they fully RMC'd this coaster. But I did not see any inversions or any changes to the layout that would scream RMC. So that might be not what you were going for, and you were just like, I just like the pieces, and I feel like the layout's more accurate. So you gotta choose. You gotta choose what you want, aesthetics, or you want to choose that layout. And if you choose this layout, and you're using pieces that can't be wooden, then you're gonna get people going, hey, this is a wooden coaster. Why did you use RMC track? I'm not a huge guy when it comes to train length. I know some people pointed out some of these trains aren't the right size, too many cars. Just double check that here and there. If it really makes the ride a little bit more accurate, that'd be fantastic. That'd be good for the viewers. Another part of the park I really liked was these people swimming in the water together, holding hands while swimming, which is just an invisible bumper boat, I think. One of the easiest things I thought to myself when looking at this is change this log cabin to no entrance, and it looks so much more realistic. Why would there be a ride entrance at the front of a pool? I don't know, but yeah, think about that kind of stuff. Super cool details. You built a lot of water rides. It's always kind of tough to come across. All of the water rides look pretty solid, and some of them weren't using peeps, but you know what? Getting movement in the park's always fun. So I really like a couple of these details. I really think this is the best part of your park is this entrance building. Who knows? Maybe you built this first, and then the rest of the park you're like, okay, I got to get this done, and then I'll come back to it to make it better. But it does look like, I do like your buildings. I do like your architecture. I'm not seeing a whole lot of rectangles, which is fantastic. So good job on the architecture. Your flat rides are pretty fantastic. Maybe foliage, maybe landscaping and shaping might be the next thing that you want to work on. Risico built Emerald Park, and what I'll say, why is this paused? Did my game just crash? Ooh, my game's crashing. Is it crashing? Is my recording still going? My recording's still going. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Risico built Emerald Park. I loved this park. I thought this was my favorite park. Besides Ball Pits, I think both of them scored virtually the same. Lots of ride variety, lots of scenery, lots of well thought stuff throughout the park. So fantastic job. I think the stations are great. The architecture is great. The details here and there. There's areas where it's just like a animal park where people are looking at animals. There's junior coaster rides. There's flat rides. There's kid rides. There's areas of the park right here where it's not a ride at all, but it's part of the real park where they have some sort of hill you can climb up. I don't care. I don't know. But this brings so much life into the park overall. Little areas like this break up the path and add some character. I think the rides overall are fantastic. These two coasters and this wooden coaster really stand out to me as the best three rides in the park. But you have fantastic theming on the water coaster, the junior coaster, this less than junior coaster. I really like the playgrounds throughout the park. The foliage is good. there's so much to say. I love this car ride over here. Lots of details. Great fence. Look at this great design for this archway coming into the park. You really can't go wrong with any part of this park. Nitpick time. You could have done this better. I know this is like uh, floor tile paintings. You know, you're using this. Uh, you can do this with the lines like you did here. You could do it with blocks. You can change it up so it looks a little bit more natural. I think the idea came across right, but a lot of people, when they looked at your park and opened it up, they thought it was actually just like a save file issue. And I don't think it is. So that's kind of an issue overall. So you might want to keep a look at that in the future and maybe experiment with dropping some of these tiles and putting full blocks underneath them to give them a clean color line. It's not that tough now, especially with some of these invisible supports for the track or for the pathway overall. So keep that in mind in the next builds. So man, great job, Risico, however you say your name. You did this solo. You deserve all the praises. Fantastic job. Last up, we've got Walto. And Walto did a fantastic job. This is a small entry, but man, oh man, were the details great. Love the flat rides. A lot of creativity. Really love the structures the flat rides are going around. That's so fantastic. So well done. Fantastic coaster with track layering. Love the foliage. These are like customized trees where he's using multiple trees and bushes to make the trees. Another fantastic area with scenery and a miniature golf. So, I mean, there's so much I can just look at and enjoy when looking at this park. Lots of overlapping pieces, peep scenes that are really funny. The train is epic. The edge of the map looks fantastic. I mean, holy cannoli, just the foliage alone is something worth looking at. So overall, fantastic build. Welcome to DKMP, and I look forward to seeing you use NCSO, DKSO, whatever you're going to use. Fantastic job. I gave this a higher rating, even though it was a smaller park. I think that just what you built was just at a level that's pretty darn incredible. So great job and welcome to the park, or welcome to DKMP. So that'll do it. That is my quick overview reviews. Hopefully the builders got some feedback, and then hopefully you all saw some really cool parks built by everybody who built in this PCC contest. So thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what your favorite park was, and I'll see you in the next video.